Even louder. Cool, so before we jump into the data and a lot of the fun stuff, I wanted to start at the top and introduce the global e-commerce market as it is today, because a lot has changed even over the last year. In 2019, e-commerce is forecasted to be $3.5 trillion. So it's 3.5 trillion US dollars in commerce that's going to happen globally on the internet. If we take a step back and think about that for a little bit, that's 50% more than the GDP of France as an entire country. Literally all of France, everything they produce, this is 50% more than that. So e-commerce has really come a very long way over the last couple of years, and if I were to present this 10 years ago, the numbers would be in the millions, not in the trillions. But I wanted to start here at the top just so we have a frame of reference of where we're at. And then I'm going to do a little bit of a geo breakdown. So we're going to look geographically at 3 different areas. We're going to look at the Americas, we're going to look at Europe, Middle East, Africa, and we're going to look at Asia Pacific. And throughout these slides, I'm going to do a couple exercises to make sure everyone's still following me and everyone's still awake. So this is going to be our first one. So e-commerce total sales in 2019. So this is the $3.5 trillion number that I mentioned at the start. So globally, we're at $3.5 trillion. Out of these 3 markets, and I kept the image at the bottom, although you can probably see it, but you have the Americas, you have Europe, Middle East, Africa, and then you have Asia Pacific. Raise of hands, we'll start from this one. Who thinks that the question is which area has the most e-commerce sales? So globally we're at 3.5 trillion. The question is which one has the highest amount. So we're going to start with the first one, which is Asia Pacific. Raise of hands, who thinks Asia Pacific has that? Salah?
Does it include China?
Asia Pacific does include India.
It does. Okay.
Good, so 3/4 hands go up. Europe, Middle East, and Africa. We got 3 hands, and Americas. We got 5 hands. You guys are actually good at this. Asia Pacific represents not only more, but literally the majority. It's almost 3/4 of global e-commerce is currently happening in Asia Pacific. And if you think about it, I could go back to a bigger picture of the map. It's not only India that you have in here, you have China, you have Hong Kong, you have Japan. But that's a crazy amount. It's funny, I've done this chart, this exercise with different audiences. And people who are from the U.S. usually think literally everyone like
they think everything happens.
All the hands go up, and America has the biggest amount, but it's not even close. Asia Pacific, what is it? 3 times more than the Americans for e-commerce total sales. Cool. One more exercise for you guys. Same regions that we're going to look at. So this is e-commerce percent of total sales. So all of the sales that happen within that region, what percent happen online is the question. Same exercise. Who thinks Asia Pacific is the highest? Raise of hands. 4 hands up. Europe, Middle East, and Africa. A couple more hands, and then we have Americas.
Yeah.
Almost the entire room. This one you guys are going to be surprised with. So America is actually the American chart should be this part should be a little bit lower. As a percent, Asia Pacific is still the highest, and if you think about that, it makes sense. When you go to like Japan, Hong Kong, all those areas, people are just so much more apt to do all their transactions online. The reason I go through this exercise, and this needs to be fixed, is that there's huge opportunities everywhere. If you think of it on a bigger scale, even Asia Pacific at 22%, what a huge opportunity. It's huge amounts of transactions that are not happening online that will be, right? If we look at this in 10 years from now, I promise you that everything will be much higher, right? It's not going to be double, everything's going to be quadruple. So tons and tons of opportunities globally, 14%. So globally only 14% of all commerce is happening online right now, and the change has been huge. These numbers, even though they seem small, 10 years ago they were all single digits. Yes, question.
Sorry, just a quick question. Because you can order like basically internationally around the world, is it considered the country of origin or the country of delivery?
This is the country of delivery. So this is where the consumer is. Yeah, good question.
But just another question.
Yeah.
Population, if you look at the Asia side of it, if you work out that as a percentage to their total sales in that country, it might give a different story because you've got more people in that country.
Yes. That's why this is a better way to look at it as a raw percent, because this doesn't take into account the population. But yeah, definitely. This one also, when presenting to audiences within the U.S., people think, for some reason, especially younger people, think that in the U.S., if I ask like raw numbers for a younger audience in the U.S., they feel like 80% happens online, right? And maybe for the younger demographics, it is, but globally, that's where we're at right now. But these are all going to change, and that's why we're here talking about all this stuff, because this is really powerful. That we're still at such an early stage in all of this, and a lot of people feel like they've missed out in digital in 2019, 2020, but we're not even close to missing out.
Sorry, Alex, but I mean, the point that you're saying now is actually a relevant one. So if you look at the European and even EMEA, the youth population compared to Asia is a different profile, and we know that. And if one looks at where the digital space is going, the younger your population, the more likely e-commerce is expected to have that excessive growth.
Absolutely, the younger population will drive this, for sure. All right, so let's talk about the actual digital consumer, and this is also something that's changed a lot over the last couple of years. And I've talked about digital in general, digital advertising, digital consumers for over a decade now, and it's come a really long way. So I'll just go through some general information just to we could frame our discussion and see where we're at right now in 2019, heading in 2020. So the user journey. So before we jump in, I'll preface this that a lot of this data is US based, but I think it's very relevant worldwide. I think in a lot of regions for this kind of information are a couple of years behind the US, but not as far behind as they used to be. So not all, but almost all the data is US based, but I think it's still very relevant. So this is from a PwC did a survey. They said that each person in the US is going to have 7 connected devices by 2020. 7 connected. If you think of it,
your Alexa, your phone, your iPad.
Laptop,
so quick,
laptop, cell phone. They now sell TVs that are connected to the internet, right? Your TV, your refrigerator, your refrigerator could do the shopping for you, right? They have the new fridges. You can make it like you run out of milk. It's funny, but they literally have it now. You run out of milk, they'll order the milk for you. Your refrigerator is a connected device. 7 number of connected devices per person by 2020. Next one you guys are gonna like too. This is by a very big study that was done as well, and this was actually a fairly recent one. This is worldwide connected devices. So right now in 2019 there's 11 billion. So these are devices that are connected to the internet worldwide. 2020 is expected to be 20 billion, almost double.
Sure. That's significant.
And again, I have a lot of conversations where either conferences or talking to companies where they're like, man, it's almost 2020. I really missed out on this digital thing. Like it's already like the growth already happened. It's literally doubling the amount of connected devices. I don't know if you guys seen yet, along with obviously smartwatches and all of that that's now been out. Amazon now has a smart ring. If you guys haven't seen it, you could Google it. They sell a connected ring that has Alexa built in. Like you could ask.
For the heart.
So cool.
Like you literally you talk to it. So this is gonna be huge and it's gonna continue to grow.
So you can track your husband.
It's for the husbands. Yes.
Big market. consumer expectations are changing. So this is data from Google. So we do a lot of work with Google. We have a very good partnership with them. They share a lot of this really cool data, and they do a lot of really cool studies. As consumers are much more curious now. 55% growth in searches for ideas. So as opposed to 10 years ago, people used the internet more of like a yellow pages or a directory. They would go on and say, I want to find a plumber. Now people are looking for ideas. They're trying to solve things themselves. They're looking for information. It's become there's a lot more different and diverse searches going on. People have become more impatient. I don't know if that's globally in the US for sure. I've seen this. And Amazon's to blame for this one a little bit. People in the e-commerce space expect same-day shipping. It's crazy because when Amazon started offering it, everyone thought it was a joke and they wouldn't succeed with it. Not only did they succeed with it, now consumers are expecting it. So definitely something to keep in mind. It's much harder to get away with saying to a consumer that you'll order the item now, you'll get it in 2 weeks, right? 10 years ago or 20 years ago, before the internet, that was no one would blink an eye. People would wait a month to get something, right? Now people are much more impatient and more demanding. So 1 in 3 expect personalization. So also driven by Amazon and a couple other companies, but consumers now expect you to give them recommendations. So when if you think about it, if you shopped on Amazon, if you're looking, for example, for camera, right? You expect Amazon to recommend to you the memory card to buy with it, the battery to buy with it, and the camera stand to buy with it. So not only is Amazon doing that to get more sales, right? Consumers expect and demand that, and if your site doesn't do it, not only will you lose out on those sales, you'll probably lose out on that consumer as well. So these are all. This is not a snapshot. This is literally the big changes that have happened in the last couple of years, and just something to keep in mind. Yes.
Do you mind if we interrupt on?
Yeah, go ahead,
points
interrupt.
So I mean, this was quite a big question for us in our business. So I'm challenging my directors on it. Is retail still retail, or is retail supply chain? And which strategy needs to be aligned to which? Because if you look at Amazon, their business strategy is a supply chain model. They just happen to sell goods.
Yes. And less and less they sell, less and less goods are more of a marketplace now.
So if you look at that way of thinking and that way of strategizing, the capex that they have invested, I mean, they haven't taken any profits out year on year, they've just been reinvesting. Where does that leave the actual retailing space going forward? Because the amount of investment that one needs to do to try and compete with the expectation of the customer that Amazon has created almost takes you out of business. So maybe that's just, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's very tricky. So we work with a lot of companies that sell both on Amazon and on their own website. So I think that's the best example because those companies have the choice and they have both platforms that they can compare. I'll tell you that in a lot of cases they have to be on Amazon just because that's where the consumer goes. Because if they're not on Amazon, they won't be discovered. But after that initial purchase, they try really hard to get the consumer to go to their website instead. So there's definitely strategies. There's for the Amazon example, I think you have to be on Amazon in the e-commerce space as long as you can and it's affordable to you and the ROIs make sense just for discoverability. But it's definitely a much different marketplace now than 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it was a lot more accepted to just have your own website and just sell your own product and not participate in these marketplaces.
So the question really is, where does it leave the traditional retailer?
The traditional retailer has to get a lot more creative in finding the consumer.
And this has become marketers' jobs. No longer are we advertising. Our job today is discoverability and driving the consumer further down into the funnel. And getting them to consider. So our jobs are no longer to say, look at how shiny and great our product is. We know you're looking for shiny and great products. We would like for you to discover ours because you are considering it and then get you to shop it.
You have to become, that's exactly it, and you have to become a lot better, and this goes perfectly into my slides a little later. you have to get really, really good at knowing your consumer and targeting your consumer. You can't run blanket ads anymore that target everyone and hope that someone you catch someone, right?
In South Africa, we call it spray and pray.
What was it?
You can't spray and pray.
Spray and pray.
You have to just have a lot more precision now. You know what? And that kind of level of precision would have always been good, but 10 years away, you would get away without it. You would get away with a spray and pray.
Yeah.
In 2019, 2020, and forward, you just won't, because the more your competitors do it, the faster you'll go out of business. And I'll get into actually some good ways to do that later on, and some good examples for that. Any other questions on this before I move on? Next slide is also a good one. Consumer path to purchase. This used to be very, very linear. If you think about yourself 10 years ago, you would look something up, you would buy it. That was the end of it, right? Now you see a social media ad, you look up the brand, you watch their video, you actually make the purchase, but then you pick it up in store and then you leave a review after. If you think about, for example, this is even a simplistic one. I have one of these that I do for the auto industry, and I do a lot of speaking events. We do a lot in the auto space and deal with a lot of auto brands. I have one of these for the auto industry. An average consumer has 28 touch points from deciding to buy a car to buying a car. From going to the actual car manufacturer's website, to looking up dealerships, to comparing cars, to looking up reviews, to watching YouTube videos, checking on their cell phone, and then on top of everything, especially for the auto guys, 50% of the consumers, they're already at the dealership. They've decided what car they want. They decide they're buying it from that dealership. They're physically standing in their dealership. They're gonna take out their cell phone and they're gonna do a final price check to see if they see any special deals or pricing. They're already at the dealership talking to a salesperson, right? Salesperson's convinced they're buying it from them. They're gonna take out their device and they're gonna do a search right there. 50% of consumers. So the purchase, the path to purchase has become completely nonlinear. It's very, very important to understand this, both for attribution analysis and both for your path of where you're going to impact them. So literally, if you draw this out for a typical consumer, it's going to look different for every single industry. You could really think about where you want to try to impact them and draw them to your site, to your product. For example, in the auto space, if someone is deciding between Honda and Toyota, right? So they haven't picked a car yet. They're literally just deciding, do I want a Honda or do I want a Toyota? As a dealership, that might not be your place to get the most impact, because are you as a small Honda dealership going to convince them not to buy a Toyota? It's going to be a hard pull. That should be on the name brand, like Honda and Toyota's marketing, right? So you decide where is the place that you want to impact them. They already decided they want a Honda. They decide the model. They're picking this between dealerships. This is where I want to impact them. I know they're going to be on a mobile device. This is what I want to do. So it's very important to kind of draw this out for your typical consumer. Cool. Any questions with this?
Sorry, I've got a question.
No.
If you had a limited budget between social and search, and I know that it depends on what kind of product you're selling, because I mean Google bidding has become expensive to bid in words, especially in the sector in which I work in. Where would you go if you had really limited budget and you really wanted to convert? Would you go social or would you go search?
Good question. So I think that the simple answer is it should always be data driven, what the data shows. But it's hard. You have to invest the money to get the data to make the decision, and then everything shifts already.
Yeah.
Personally, so as an agency, we do on behalf of our clients, we spend the same 25 million with Google and 25 million with Facebook. So we're pretty even in terms of spend. For in most cases, Google will still give you a better bang for your buck. If you want to do like brand awareness type of campaigns, like if you're like Pepsi or Coke, social media is very powerful. And I'll tell you why Google is still powerful, even though it costs so much more. If you come home and your pipe burst and it's leaking in the basement, right? It's leaking, the water's all over the place. You're gonna take out your cell phone. You're gonna search plumber, right? With Facebook, to get that person, you'd have to work really, really hard to identify the right audience, and Facebook will use their algorithm to think maybe that person's in market right now, right? And even if they are in Facebook, you could catch them late. You have the right audience, but they already made a purchase. So you're showing ads to someone who just bought your product or someone else's product that they're no longer in market. So Google's still so much more powerful because of it depends on the industry, but anything that has any kind of urgency, Google will still by far the best answer. Because people literally just take out their cell phone and search. Facebook is better at trying to move awareness, increase favorability, like those kind of metrics. And you could use that to ultimately drive sales, but it's a lot trickier.
So the simple answer is it depends on the urgency.
It depends on a lot of things. I'd love for all those decisions to be data driven as opposed to gut driven. But for most of our clients, Google performs better than Facebook.
Just a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
It's a lot more expensive, but they still get, even though it's more expensive, they get better ROI than Facebook.
So maybe just to follow up on that, because I mean, as consumer behavior changes, it's changing rapidly based on technology and your savviness with the level of technology and your social awareness. So I mean, how much data does one need to store, and how often would you want to change your strategy to be in the right place at the right time?
Data, you should store everything. Luckily, a lot of third-party services like Google Analytics will store for you, and we'll get into some good data stuff after, because that's the first thing when I talk to companies. First thing I tell them to make sure they're storing the data and storing everything. And they're like, oh, I don't want to start marketing for another 6 months. That's the first step. First step is always to store data. How often should you be changing strategies? It depends on your marketplace. In the auto space, you don't have to be as quick because things are slower moving. Some industries are a lot quicker moving though, so it all depends on your industry. There's also, every industry has seasonality and holidays, so there's definitely, I wouldn't keep the same strategy if you're in e-commerce. I wouldn't keep the same strategy in July as you would in December, for example.
Wow.
In terms of actually, like, without the seasonality, how often you should reevaluate it, I would say every 2 to 3 months would be good.
Wow.
Sure.
It's fast moving.
Very
It didn't used to
fast.
be that. In early 90s, big companies would use they would come up with a strategy and use it for like 10 years, right? And that'd be fine. It'd be fine. It worked. Now it's just there's so much more data, and companies are just trying to outcompete each other literally by data and agility.
Yeah.
They just have to try and keep up with that.
I think if you say the customer is very demanding now, it forces you to kind of challenge that, challenge company to effectively have long-term strategies as well. Because if they want it now. You can't wait for, I would say in 3 months it could be even quite hectic.
Yes.
If we say speak to market, you need to think now.
Yes.
You can't wait.
Yeah, definitely.
But again, so I'm going to keep on bringing back, because we here for retail and the strategy of retail. Mm-hmm. And in South Africa, because we do a high percentage of imports for our apparel, it takes you 6 months to get that stock. So you're actually planning your season 6 months in advance. And if the data is changing at this rapid pace, surely it's going to put significant impact on our government as well as our sector to start seeing how to in-house and how to shorten that lead times to get the right product to market.
So I think even if your product takes 6 months to arrive, I don't think you could plan out the marketing strategy at that point.
No.
I think you have to be planning out much sooner to deliver it, because things change so rapidly. I think that's just the key. Even if you know the product's not, or even if you don't know what the product is, you could already start doing basic research closer to the. And hopefully it comes in time and everything comes together. It becomes a lot more challenging, for sure.
But to be honest, we don't change product often. We change strategies that are linked to commerce often. You wear jeans as much as you wear jeans as much as you wear jeans. Whether they've got
It should, the style should not change your overall strategy.
Absolutely.
But if you start messing around with price points and
a different story.
demographics, maybe a little bit, maybe
Yeah.
it would. I have actually a good example for you for fashion, a couple of slides down. Final one in consumer. Again, it's just something to keep in mind. This is comparing, this source thing got deleted, but I think this is comparing 2017, 2013, changes in consumers. Brand loyalty is down 60%. Consumers are a lot less loyal than they've ever been, ever. And the younger you go, typically the less loyal they are. Fashion is no different. Higher end fashion, there's still some loyalty in. Lower to middle end, if they could get something that looks similar for twice cheaper, they're going to do it. Digital influence is 75% more important. And again, this is, I think, comparing it to 3 years ago. A lot more important for them to research the company style, brand online, and that impacts their decision more than anything else. If you think about 10 years ago, all the studies of what's important for influence, people's friends and family were always number one for almost any decision. From what jeans they bought to what car they bought. It was always friends and family.
Are these US stats? Are these US stats or global?
These are US, but I think they're mostly applicable. Maybe not such high swings, but they're mostly applicable. And profitability, this is for all of e-commerce, omni-retailers in the US. Profitability is actually down. So with all these challenges, on top of that, you get hit with lower profitability.
It's
Yes.
scary. You almost wonder who's going to be in business after that.
Exactly.
You know,
On
That's
the
right.
relevance,
Mhm.
you spoke about apparel mainly. Does that include food as well? If there's no brand loyalty, or are we still seeing brand loyalty in foods?
In what? In
Food.
Food.
FMCG.
Much less. Also, brand loyalty across the board's down. Even car brands struggle with it. A lot of people would be, especially I don't have as much experience internationally as the US, but in the US, for example, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, a lot of people were very brand loyal. People would buy the same brand car.
Yeah.
They didn't care that the car got worse
Yeah.
or like it lost a feature or something. Like this is my third Cadillac. I love it. Like it's my dad had a Cadillac. I'm gonna get a Cadillac. So it was very. The auto industry itself taught people to buy within the same brand. Like GM did very well, and so Ford, literally they had a hierarchy. When you gave first cars a Chevy, then you move on to a Buick, and then you get like literally they built this. People had the loyalty; they stayed with her. Now that loyalty is not there. People jump around cars.
But our businesses now know in terms of the brand loyalty trying to then lock you down. I mean, if you see with I think it's Mercedes-Benz, they've got different ways of financing you to say over time you can keep.
Yes.
Because I guess now their strategy has to be how do we keep
Yes.
people loyal? How do we lock customers?
Yeah. So loyalty isn't zero; it's just down, and now you have to work a lot harder
At
at keeping your
innovation.
consumer. Yeah. Yes.
But again, if you come back to the social environment, because this is what is driving a lot of this transformation. So before, it was a very much groupthink
Yes.
and very much family and influenced by your family in that
And
decision
friends,
making.
yes.
Whereas at the moment, with the younger generation, X, I don't know if it's I, whatever they named it, they're going to a lot more individualization, and it's very about me. So the reality of trying to keep them satisfied and keep them loyal to a brand when things are changing at a rapid pace is going to become even more and more difficult.
Yes, and it's already probably over the last 5 years. It's become a lot more difficult, and it's going to become even more difficult.
Is it about whoever can give you the little pink dot on the right corner where you want it versus the pink dot
The
on the
instant
bottom left, that
gratification.
instant gratification, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, right now.
Interesting.
Digital advertising. So that was we talked about e-commerce in general. We talked about the consumer, and now we're actually going to talk about advertising. And then after that, we're going to talk about the actual data and how you could use that. This is also so. The next two slides have been a presentation in itself. So obviously, digital advertising is a very big topic, and you could talk about it for hours. I narrowed it down. I think literally I just have two slides for you guys, but. Again, it's just to frame everyone's thinking and to understand where we're coming from and where we are. And this is going to be U.S. data, but the whole world's following all of this. So it's going to be very similar. This is where your consumers are spending their time. Again, this is for the US, but I imagine globally, if it's not like this yet, it will be very soon. This is how many hours per day the consumer spends on each media. So for those that are in the back, this is TV, digital, radio, print, and other. And this is 2012, this is 2016, this is 2018 forecast. So the actual was even a bigger change. So for TV, people used to spend, and this is 2012, so it was a six years ago there's a 6-year difference from these two. People used to spend 4 hours, almost 40 minutes on TV per day, now it's 3 hours, 55 minutes. If you think about it, people who are even spending the 355, and I know very few people spend this much time watching TV, usually holding their cell phone while doing it, right? So not only is there a decrease, there's still in this section. Digital. We've gone from 4 hours to 6. Biggest increase actually from here to here was mobile. This is from 2016 to 2018. I have this in another deck broken out. Mobile just exploded here. People are just spending a lot more time. And the exercise I usually do, and you guys are traveling so it's not fair, but the exercise I do is I ask the crowd how many people in the room spend 3 hours watching TV today, how many people spend three hours on their computer or cell phone. Almost no one spends 3 hours on TV. Everyone's on their computer or cell phone. Radio is mostly flat down a little bit. Print's down a little bit. In the U.S., a lot of print companies have gone out of business in the last couple of years, literally because of that. The last couple of years hasn't been a big drop because a lot of print companies finally embraced digital and they put their content on digital. But this is literally why they went out of business. From 2012 to 2016, the amount of time people spend on print, the amount of time people read newspapers and all of that just took a huge drop.
It's a little different for us on TV in South Africa.
It's still high.
It's still high, yes. I think even aside from South Africa, I did a similar session in Europe. It was different from Europe also, but they're starting to notice.
No, we can see it. We can definitely
but
see
not
it.
not as
Not
extreme.
as the similarities are in print. We've had actually a few publications closed down completely. Some have
in the U.S. In the U.S. that happened like 5 years ago was
yeah.
the big drop off.
Yeah, and then radio is quite interesting for us because of our traffic time. So that
People
1
stay in
to
the car.
5, you spend a little bit more in the car, which means naturally that would go up a little bit, and it's been a great medium for conversion actually. Funny enough, radio personalities remain celebrities.
Yeah,
I'm sure it is.
It's not bad here. You know, the big change, and you can't see it in this, in the last 12 months in the U.S., the big change has been from radio to podcast. A lot more people are listening to podcasts, but that's powered by everyone having a mobile device with a lot of data.
Yeah, that's the difference with us.
Overseas, almost every other country, you don't have that.
Yeah.
So maybe you'll eventually make it through, but the podcasts have made, in this area, in the NYC Metro, 2 major radio stations closed in the last year because the move to podcasts. People are just listening to podcasts.
Yeah, makes sense.
Next one to bring this all together. Again, this is US based, but I think everyone will catch up. So the big disconnect, and jump here again. The eyeballs are on digital, right? For 2018, almost twice more spending on digital. This is ad spend. So this is media consumption. So this is similar to the chart before, but this is in a percent of overall. So what percent of your time are you consuming different medias? TV is 36%, digital is 47%, and this is old, this is from 2017. The point here though is ad spend still hasn't caught up, and it's even a bigger disconnect as I've done this internationally. So in the US, the eyeballs are half of your time, you're literally on a digital device, and when you're watching TV, you're still probably on a digital device, right? Ad spend still hasn't caught up. Companies are still spending a lot more money on TV than they are on digital, and I think this disconnect is even bigger internationally, and I think this is where the opportunities lie.
We simply don't have the avenues to spend our digital dollars. There is not
We have limited
enough.
inventory.
Yeah, there isn't enough inventory in South Africa for you to take a $200,000 campaign and put it behind digital. It's going to be oversaturated, and it actually, honestly, digital doesn't convert for us, regardless of what we do. You can, I don't know, you can do display, you can do whatever you want to do. It just doesn't work. Whereas we find with television, number one, you're able to convert, and if you want to sit at the top of the funnel and do awareness, there is no better way for you to do
Yes,
it.
you reach as you get
TV,
on.
with reach, it's crazy, and frequency on radio. So we just don't have the inventory in our country to do it.
I think it'll catch up.
I think
Yes.
you have to consider in South Africa as well the amount of people and the population that has access to smartphones, and where television, radio, newspaper, magazines is still a bigger platform considering the
But we don't have the inventory either. You
Yeah.
guys have got so much more than us.
Yes.
If I can just add
Yes.
there, so believe it or not, Pip, a couple of years ago, we didn't want to go into the smartphone business. Even though us younger ones kept on saying, why are we not there? Now we're selling more than 1 million phones per month at Pip stores. We sell about 12 million
making it
handsets,
accessible.
of which 60% of that is smartphones, and it's the first one that sells up. And we were under the assumption that our demographic is not in the smartphone business.
They are, but they don't have access to it. So you've now brought it to the people.
I think it's data. They do
Data.
have.
It's
the
the
most selling
data.
item
That
is
is
the
the-
smartphone in any community. It's the data that they
The
just
data
more
is
access to that.
And it's also inventory. We don't
They'll catch
have
up.
any
Well,
to tell people that we are selling this stuff.
As older consumers get data cheaper, they'll be
That's the
online
thing.
more, and then your inventory will come out. It'll all catch up. And it's not just you guys. Europe's also behind on all of this. It's the same issues with data, and without data, they don't use the mobile devices as much. Without them using it, it's harder for advertisers. It all goes around. But for me, it's crazy to see such a disconnect. And not to say TV is not effective. TV is very effective. It's just the rates in the U.S. that most channels charge for TV have gone up. They have not gone down. So people are watching it less, and rates are actually flat to up. Same for all the other sections, even billboards. So we have a client who does billboards, so I was looking at their pricing. Over the last 10 years, their cost to have a billboard, so they put up the signs on the highways. I don't know if it's common. It's not that, their prices have gone up a little bit. But if you think about it, they do a lot of billboards in New York, this client. If you think about it, in New York City, 10 years ago when almost no one had a smartphone and smartphones just came out and it wasn't even a thing, people are sitting around in the taxi, right, looking at the billboards. Today, you get into a taxi, no one's sitting around looking at billboards, right? The attention has dropped, but the prices have gone up. So not to say billboards are bad or TVs are bad, it's just very important to note these changes. And it's important to note in the US because I think it'll propagate globally. Yes, question.
Another interesting thing that we can bring in is on TV now, because of Showmax and Netflix and DSTV and the limited time you have to watch something, you're rather watching on those avenues without ads, so you don't even have the time to see ads. You're watching TV, and there may be a disconnect from the time spent on TV and the ads on TV, because you're actually not watching ads at all.
Because ads are spam.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think the advertising spend on TV is mostly influenced by the sport. Because most people spend a lot of time on TV watching sport. And then the target audience is quite big.
Because that's live.
But it still has
And
changed.
trash TV.
It's still changed over the last, especially if in the US where data is cheaper. Even if you're watching sports, when the commercial comes on, people go on their cell phone to like look stuff up and talk to a friend. It's yes.
So that she brought up a good point. Is that TV, traditional TV, or
Traditional.
traditional TV? So watching Netflix doesn't even count as
Netflix does not count it here, no. Netflix would go into digital, but there's almost no advertising on Netflix, especially when this came around. The last takeaway I have from this is that literally this is the arbitrage opportunity, and again, you guys are more limited by inventory and a lot of things, but I think you'll get to this level in a couple of years. I think in 2-3, this is from 2017. I think 2-3 years you'll be there. It's important to watch the disconnect because the eyeballs are here, but the spend isn't. So you still get a much better bang for your buck. I won't waste too much time with this story, but I had the story where when radio just literally was invented during the World War and after it became commercialized and everything, it took a while for people to start advertising on radio. Radio was originally just a broadcast tool. Literally, someone would broadcast their information, people would say, listen. I feel like comparing it to the digital space, it's probably closest to Twitter, right? Where you just post into the world and everyone watches. It took a while for anyone to realize this is really a captive audience. In the US, people would buy these huge radios, like they would be like huge, and they would gather around as a family. They would have dinner. After dinner, they would gather around as a family around the radio, and they would literally captive audience. They would sit and listen to the radio. And a couple of companies realized, wow, we have this captive audience. We should advertise to them. And those companies just did really, really well because no one else was doing it, and it was so the attention was there, but the cost was still so cheap. So that's my takeaway with digital. Even though we're approaching 2020, and a lot of people think they've kind of missed the boat, the disconnect is still huge. For our own company, we spend over $100,000 every month on our own advertising. We put everything to digital, almost everything into Google Ads, and I could tell you that today, for every dollar I put into advertising, I'll get $5 back, lifetime value. So lifetime value, I'll get $5 back. This time last year, I would probably put $1 and get $5.50 back. Year before, get $6 back, right? So I think the gap will close as more people realize that I could take my TV money, put into digital, and get a better ROI. I think they'll start closing, but there's still huge opportunities even in the US. And I think for you guys, you're still a couple of years behind us, so you're really could be on top of the ball with this stuff. Question, yes?
So you've got media consumption for newspapers at 1.6%.
Yes.
But the ad spend in newspapers is 10% of that.
Yes.
That's quite an interesting stat because it's being consumed so little, but you're still paying the same as you're paying on radio,
yes,
where the consumption is a lot more. Is that because of the food retailers again? Because where we come from, a lot of the advertising happens on broad papers, and there's a lot of money that goes into it where the manufacturer picks up those costs. Is it similar, or is it
so not so much. So it is. So that's exactly the perfect takeaway from that. That shows that magazine and newspaper advertising is just oversaturated. A lot of things like this happen when industries are in transition. So the rates to advertise in newspapers and magazines have not really decreased much over the last 10 years. Consumption shatter. Like if you see pictures of New York City, like people sitting in the subway reading a newspaper, even 10 years ago. If you guys watch any sitcoms like Friends or Seinfeld, right? Anytime they're in a subway, everyone has their newspaper open. I think I could spend all day riding a subway back and forth. I'm not gonna find anyone sitting. You know the big newspapers, literally people would sit like this. I think it just that's the flip of digital. Digital, the eyeballs are here, but the advertising isn't caught up. I think newspaper and magazines is the opposite. Advertising prices are still are high from an industry that used to do a lot better, and it just hasn't caught up. And that's why they're trying to charge a lot, and some companies are still spending. But that's why a lot of newspapers, magazines are going out of business, consolidating. It's been the industry's in a tough shape because they haven't caught up. They should be charging a lot less, and the ad spend will then come down to be equal to the new consumption numbers. It's tough for those industries. I mean, the play for newspaper and magazines is to become as digital as possible, and there's a lot of ways to do it. Wall Street Journal does it in a very smart way. They let you. They put all their content digitally. They let you see, I want to say, 5 articles or 3.
Harvard University only gives you 3.
Yeah, and then you have to pay for it. So they're trying to make things work, but obviously they internally know these numbers as well. And they're like, oh shit. I think that's it I have for that section. So the next one's going to be about data.
Can I go back?
Yes.
Are you able to give us a list of the inventory that's available in the States?
Yes. Yes.
It would be quite interesting to see what we don't have.
Like for digital?
For digital.
Yeah. So I'll take out my business cards after. Grab my business card. So I could even in a much more specific way. If you give me the keywords, I could literally tell you the inventory. I also have a lot of tools for even international. So I could estimate. You probably have your own, but maybe I could do some kind of estimate so you don't have access to it.
And my last question. In your view, what is the future of owned media platforms for advertisers in this particular context? Because eventually we become our own publishers, right? And at some point we, as publishers feel that we don't need publishing houses to spread the message, even from an awareness point of view, because we've done so much work on brand equity, etc., etc. And there's been a big push towards owned media platforms, which obviously are not as authentic as an earned media platform. But what is your view on owned?
I think that's exactly where it's going to. I think there's still opportunity for things to change. I think there's still opportunity for some kind of disruption to happen, for it to swing another way.
Yeah.
But certainly has been moving into that direction. Publishing changing a lot. Yeah. Try to see if there's any advice I could give, but I think at this point you just got to follow.
When advertisers come to us, we say we've got a bigger audience than you do.
Yeah.
We've got bigger eyeballs than you. We've got more eyeballs than you. And why do we need you to publish our message? And then they'll say, let's see if our audiences look alike, and as a reason, can we find a way to have an audience that you don't have? And it always in South Africa ends up being about the same audience because we're all targeting the same audience. Yes. And when you sit with a very big owned media platform where you own the data, you understand the consumer, you can see where they are in the journey, advertising to a certain degree becomes redundant.
It's the same audience, definitely.
It's the same audience.
I think for you guys, you just have a much more limited audience, so you run into problems like that. But obviously, no advantage to paying someone more for the same audience that you're targeting already.
Absolutely.
Question in the back.
So there's an interesting case study from Lush Cosmetics. So they're a Polish brand, sustainable.
We saw them yesterday.
And they've actually decided to disinvest in all advertising and actually invest that money in their own
media platforms.
Because they got tired of keeping up with the moving algorithms of digital marketing. And they were getting frustrated because the goalposts were moving so frequently and they were becoming very suspicious of the data. So they cut out advertising entirely, and they've invested in their website. They've invested in their social media platforms by creating more engaging content. They've also invested in other brand extensions, like a music recording label, a spa, and I can't remember the other one, but from a production and manufacturing point of view, which is very bold. And I think if you really understand your target market and your consumer, and you are more interested in actually engaging with them in a unique and authentic way, they'll always be there. They'll actually do the marketing for you. And also, if you're telling people what they need, you've already won the race already. So Lush does it really well. They even have a catalog, which is not like a traditional catalog, but more of a magazine. And it's got editorial content. It's got features on all the other things that they are busy with. But then they slot in the price and promo and product in there in not such a very aggressive way as most retailers do. And I think also their key is also the investment in their people, which are also part of their brand custodians that influence the customers to purchase.
I guess then digital advertising, thanks Andile, I guess then the role of digital advertising sits at the top of the funnel on awareness. Because if these guys from Lush don't know about Lush, they'll never know about Lush because Lush doesn't talk to them. But I think awareness, goes back to Google, then you bid against the words that you want to bid against to get the kind of audience that you want. And then when you do, you draw them to your own media platforms and you keep talking to them forever and a day.
I agree. I think a lot of the awareness stuff, a lot of branding awareness stuff I think you could do away with. I think what they did sounds very risky, by the way. I don't know about that. At the end of the day, though, the lower funnel stuff I think you still have to do. For example, if you're a company that sells black socks, right? You sell black socks. You bid when someone searches on Google, I want to buy black socks. They come to your website and they buy your black socks. If you're not bidding on that, you're losing that consumer, and they'll click to your competitor and they'll buy their socks. Yes, you could get away with lowering your social media and doing less display ads and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, if you sell black socks and someone's searching, I want to buy black socks, you want your ad there, and the only way to do it is to pay Google, right? I think that you can't miss out on. I would say you can do away with a lot of digital media if it's not generating an ROI for you, and it's sure it'll be data driven. If they did the analysis and they said we spent all this money and I know that it didn't make me enough sales, that's perfectly fine decision to do. If it's like a gut decision, then that sounds terrible. But the Google search stuff, it's just so hard to get rid of because that's how the consumer search these days. And as consumers start doing more and more voice searches and mobile searches, you're just not gonna get them anyway. You could have the most engaging and best website and platform in the world, and if someone literally all they're gonna do is go, I want to buy black socks, and it shows you 3 ads, and they click one of them and buy it, they just will never get to your site. Voice search also is going to play into this a lot. That's a growing segment in the U.S., not as much worldwide yet, but I think that'll catch up also. A lot of people now have home devices that they talk to and they ask things, and that's all powered by search.
This further builds the case for my question around where should I spend my money. It looks like it's going to have
for most of our clients, Google Ads still has the best ROI out of everything else. I would say, I don't want to, being taped, I don't want to get in trouble with Facebook, but I think I would say 8 out of 10, maybe 9 out of 10 get a better ROI from Google Ads than anything else.
Good.
Cool. So next is we'll actually jump into data and we'll do some more raise your hand type of questions to make sure everyone's still with me. So this is literally the questions everyone's been asking the whole time. How do you actually win in this kind of landscape and everything, and we do it through data. So I'll give you 2 quick slides of what data should be available to everyone here, and then we'll do a quick exercise of why it's important to follow. So this is a typical report that we give our clients. So this pulls from Google Analytics. So all of this should be in your Google Analytics if you use it. If you use any other analytics software, it should be very similar. Very hard to see. Let's see if I could. Probably not.
I think that's as good as it.
I'll read it out for you. So this is a big e-commerce young women's fashion company. They do, I think, 100 million in sales in the last couple of years. But more so here, this is literally data for last month. This is a report we generated for them. And there'll be another slide after this. So all of you guys should have all of this. If you have a website, definitely use some kind of analytics product. This pulls from data from Google Analytics, which is super, super powerful for people who have been here with this industry long enough. There used to be a product called, to go back 15 years, old analytics software is really, really expensive. There was 3 companies out there that provided it. One of them was Urchin. I believe they sold their package actually gave you this kind of data for $1,000 a month. So $1,000 you pay per month, no matter how big your website is. Google came and bought them, renamed it to Google Analytics, and made it free. So Google Analytics is really an enterprise level product that you get for free. So there's other options out there that are not bad, but at the very least you should be using analytics. So I'll walk through this. So what this shows us is this is what everyone should be measuring and making decisions based off of. Revenue, RPU is revenue per user. So they know based on all these different metrics how much revenue they get from that individual user. So for example, they know that from people in Los Angeles, they get a much better revenue per user than than people in Florida. So all of this data, not only can you use to make strategic decisions, and we have Age over there, we use this data to actually feed into Google AdWords. So with the new improvements in Google AI and machine learning, we actually take this data and we feed it into Google AdWords, and we adjust how much we bid for the audiences on the fly. So we were able to make adjustments between the time that someone puts in a keyword in Google search and the ad comes up. So in the milliseconds between that, we make adjustments based on this data. And next slide has even more interesting things. Day of the week. So we literally know for this one consumer, average revenue per user based on the day of the week, hour of the day, device, affinity groups, and market audiences, and all of these could be combined. They're just presented this way. So for example, we could combine We know that based on the data, males are more likely to purchase during these hours than these hours. And this is not a manual adjustment that's happening. It feeds in through the AI algorithm and happens on the fly. So I don't have to sit there manually and make these adjustments. But this is literally what helps a company. We've had case studies where they get their ROI jumps like triple digits, double their ROI. Just know, and if you have Google Analytics, you should be recording this. In a lot of cases, people actually have this data, they just don't know they have it, and don't know they could.
Or what to do with it.
Or what to do.
Because there's no, once again,
yes. And this is literally, even in Google Analytics, you could configure it to say revenue per user. It's literally a direct pull. And then you could line it up against affinity groups and audiences. For example, for this specific client, I'll show you a picture of their website, women's fashion. People who travel a lot are actually much more valuable to them than the average consumer. So they could use that to target travel websites and things like that. Lots of really cool data.
So this is linked to an e-com store, right?
This is actually
affinity groups can still be given to you by Facebook, though, if you're.
Yeah. This is through Google, but Facebook also has them.
Okay.
They won't directly.
But then
match
they
up,
obviously
but
don't
they'll
give you
be
RPUs because they don't have that.
Facebook.
Yeah.
So if you link it up, it'll feed into your Google Analytics. So your Google Analytics can give it to you. This is from Google Analytics. You now have market and affinity in Google Analytics.
So if you're looking to find a lookalike audience on Facebook from that affinity group, you can take that group, put it into Facebook, and then it'll give you a lookalike audience.
Yes, but I think there's a lot of privacy rules about exporting data.
Well,
not
if
you follow
really
Facebook's guidelines.
Yes.
Yes.
So if I'm looking for women who love dogs, who love to shop for their pets,
it's a lot harder, but so every single data point is matched to a Google G-Clit. There's ways to make that work.
Okay.
It's much easier to link this up and do Google Ads.
Yeah.
So Google Ads, you could directly target this without doing anything. To get this into Facebook gets tricky. But at the very least, you could see what the groups are and try to find a similar one on Facebook. Yeah, I think that would be the way to go.
Okay.
Yes, question about.
Is this dashboard bespoke to your company, or is it just a screen?
Yeah, so this is an actual dashboard from our company to give all our clients, but it pulls with API. So this is what's called Data Studio, Google Data Studio. So similar to Google Analytics, Google Data Studio used to be an expensive enterprise product. They actually made it free now. So you can make really cool dashboards and pull. The way we use it is allows us to pull data from a lot of different sources. So these two slides are just Google Analytics, but we actually, for our reports, we pull data from like 10 different sources and match it up. But this exact same views are in Google Analytics. We just, in our report, make it look a little prettier. Cool. We're going to do a quick exercise with this data. So this is literally the website that we were just looking at the data for. They are a women's fashion brand, younger women fashion brand. They do, I don't know, can't see from the charts too well, but non-holiday they do $10 million a month in revenue from their website. Traffic's going up and revenues have been going up. They've been doing really well. So the exercise we're going to do now is we're going to look at the actual data, and you guys are going to tell me who's more valuable to them. So this is, for the first exercise, we have female and male. So raise of hands who thinks, and I'll show you the website again, although this one's pretty obvious. Women's fashion. Who's more valuable to them? Female audience, raise of hands who thinks this female is more valuable to them. Okay. Almost half the room. Male. A third, and then we lost a third somewhere along the way. So at the end of the side, at the end of the table is conversion rate. So males actually convert a lot higher for them. Yes, they get a lot less for them, right? But and it's not. It's so much. This is, I think, a couple of years of data. It's any kind of statistical significance that would show up as significant. So there's really a lot of this data analysis that everyone should be doing, because it's not always obvious, right? You could look, if you didn't do the analysis, you look at the website, you'd be like, I don't even want to advertise to males, right? Yeah. You would stop all advertising to males. Based on this, they actually will convert better, and it makes sense. People buy stuff as gifts and things like that. But all these decisions should be data driven. If it did say males are worse, you should advertise less. And it should be literally the proportion. You should calculate the revenue you make from each, and that's how you should spend advertising on a per click basis or whatever basis you do.
Okay, but then, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
But then, how do you then advertise to these males who are coming to shop only for special occasions, and this is not part of the affinity? They don't do this as part of their daily life to shop for women. They're doing it in special occasions and moments.
Yes.
What dollar value would you spend per male to make sure that you target the right male who's going to shop for his wife the day before the birthday?
So I think this is kind of just to start the thinking. I think it requires further analysis. So my next steps would be to see broken down by age group, which we're going to do next. But I would want to see males by age groups because I think that'll be also very telling. I don't think you'd want to target all males. I think the age groups would be very important. And I think looking seasonality-wise would be very important. Probably 2 to 4 weeks before holidays. There's before maybe other event, graduation is a big event in the U.S. There's a time where everyone graduates from college. But I think this is like the beginning of the analysis, and then you gotta dig deeper and see actually, like if you look at male conversion rate over time, which you could do in analytics. It would be this is a screenshot from Google Analytics. Male conversion rates over time, see if it actually spikes during the holidays, and the rest of the time it's low, right? I would just blanket start spending more on males, but this is the kind of data-driven information that almost everyone should have, and you could really be using to set your marketing apart.
Male conversion over time in South Africa, 22, 23, maybe 24 December, for fragrances, and then it just drops.
Yeah, that makes
This is
sense.
apparel, hey?
This is apparel, young women's fashion.
Yeah. Because you kept on saying young women, and I don't know what it's got to do with the ads. Maybe they're doing, to convince a male to be able to say, whatever they advertise, then I can buy for my partner or something like that. Maybe they're not good in what they do.
Yeah, we work with them, so we're good at, no, we do consulting for them. But they do a lot of things very well in general. Same exercise we're going to do with age. Which group converts the best? Raise of hands for 18 to 24 years old. No, but I think we're starting to lose people.
But what's the price
We have no
money.
It's cheaper stuff. I don't know if we have prices. Yeah, let me see if I could get a screenshot of that.
It looks
shirts. Well, in the U.S. it's different than here, but it's I would say mid market. $18, $20.
I'd say the 18 to 24.
So this is actually the group they target, which is funny, but obviously I wouldn't have made a slide if one of the other ones were bigger. 18 to 24, raise of hands. 1, 2, 25 to 34.
Yeah.
Big percent. That was like 70%. 35 to 44. 45 to 54. Yep. 55 to 64. 65 plus. That's
don't have money, so
the e-commerce conversion rates. Again, this is so much data in here. This is all super statistically significant. The best group was 65 plus.
wow, what?
So they're a small percent of the total revenue, but they are more likely to make a sale.
Do they even know how to
switch it on?
These are gifts to grandparents, parents, and
spend their pensions.
Yeah, for the conversion.
Yes.
Stats.
These are Americans.
Yeah.
Because in South Africa, if you think about it, our grandparents can't afford.
It will be different. So they're a worldwide company, but most of their sales are US based. So it will be different for each country, each industry, but you would have to look at these exact numbers. But so they did actually further analysis and all of this, and not only do they convert better, the older group, they convert a lot quicker. They go to a website and they just buy, right?
Yeah.
The younger people, they leave, they come back, they might not buy, they call sales. The older people go on, they buy, and they're done.
Or it could be the other way around. It could be a grandchild with a car.
And this is the conundrum, right? Because where do your marketing comms go at any given time? Because your everything that's geared around your comms has got to do with look and feel, age group, who are you targeting, what does it look like, and the rest. And I mean, the pictures that you just showed us 2 slides ago of that girl who's practically not dressed is very, very difficult for a grandpa.
Yes, to be purchasing for it.
To purchase, right? Your message needs to be succinct and clear for.
This group is small too. Even though they convert better, I wouldn't make.
You wouldn't worry about advertising to them. So you leave them to just convert it on their own.
It's very tough.
And then your comms goes towards 25 to 34. And you stick to that.
It's a good question. Do you target your bigger groups or the ones that convert better? Question.
The question is around the conversion rate. So I'm assuming your conversion is a click that becomes a sale.
Yes.
So I'm struggling a bit because the revenue for the age level 65 plus is only 641,000 compared to the revenue of the 20,000.
Very small group. So you don't get a lot of those people, but you would want those people because they convert better.
And then how do you target them?
But true.
I understand.
But that doesn't mean that that is actually where your
biggest sales.
The biggest sales.
No, absolutely
no.
not.
So your biggest sales are actually sitting between your 18 to
That's correct. It's not your biggest sales.
Yeah.
It's your most effective sales. It's not your biggest sales. This is more. Each one of these people costs you the same amount to get them to your website. Each person costs you $1 to get to your website. You want these people because they're more likely to actually buy.
And they're just going to buy because they're clicking and they want to move on. Whereas those people, they will probably, when they're going to come back, they're going to repeat.
And that's when you
target them. 65 plus and you're a buyer.
Yes.
So I think it's a bit misleading if you're saying you're 65 plus, especially for the website that we're looking at, because that's a very different kind of
I wouldn't say it's your most important audience, but I would say you want these people if you could get more of them.
But should you talk to them?
Are you not wasting your time talking to them because
they're going to buy you?
Once of purchase, they're buying a gift. I can't see them wearing whatever was on their
I think they are influenced by a younger customer though, because they're buying for that younger customer. So for them to just want to
spend money trying to get them.
But they might come again. If there's a granddad, let's just say it's a granddad. I mean, if I'm looking for Forever 21, I'm going to use that.
It's similar to Forever 21, yes.
Forever 21 is a bad idea. Because they're going back to that. But if I look at the customer in that store, it's the grandkids that might be at varsity or matric. And they're always with someone who's going to pay. They're always with a parent or a grandparent who's going to pay because it's not cheap. So it could be that. And for me, the reason why I can't discount that customer because they pay.
Sure, but also it could be that I am just registered as that user on that website.
Exactly what
I
am
so
this is Google Analytics. This is not based on registration data. This is fairly accurate recently. Yes.
Okay.
So that's just a short break.
Okay.
It's going to be 5 minutes.
Okay.
That's good.
Thank you, Mr. William. Come on, KG.
Here you could import data.
What's that one?
Yeah. Stop the video really quick.
The blesser has to pay. The blesser must pay. That's why.
All right, let's jump back in. I think there were a couple more questions on this, or is everyone good with this specific slide? So we're looking at different age breakdowns for both users and conversion rates, transactions. Good?
Good.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're actually going to do another one of these, so it'll reinforce everything we want to go. Completely different websites. So this is auto parts. Car exhaust, like that kind of. This is literally a screenshot from the site. Purely e-commerce. They don't have a store. They ship everywhere within the U.S. We're going to do the same exact exercise. Although now everyone's going to know the answer, so it's going to be a little tougher. But which gender converts better for them, male or female? Any hands for male?
Male.
Yeah. So it's auto parts store, the car exhaust. Female? See, now everyone knows all my tricks.
Yeah, we see through you now, you see.
I was going to do 3 examples, but then I did 2. Females convert a lot better for them. They convert actually twice better for them. And it's not, I mean, it's smaller groups. So it's 12% of the visitors, but they convert twice better. And the same analysis, people who buy it. If you think about it, everyone needs this stuff. So this is like replacement car parts, like your exhaust broke, fell off, something like that. So everyone needs it, not just males. It might be country specific, a lot of this stuff also, but in the U.S. for them, females are only 12% of the visitors, but the conversion rate is twice more. Same analysis, females would also buy a lot quicker. Yes.
I think what is becoming clear in the data is that direct target marketing, you actually want to redesign depending on what your stats show.
Yes.
For the different product types and the lines.
Yes.
To get a higher sales rate, to increase the sales rate.
And you could segment all this data by product line, by product.
Yeah.
What I want everyone here to kind of take away is that not to make assumptions of the data. Like just because I have a fashion site doesn't mean I'm only selling to women. All your decisions really need to be data driven. I think 5-10 years ago, you could get away with kind of guesstimating. Now, especially as bigger companies, so much of it is just so zeroed in and so data driven that everyone has to be, just to be competitive. Yes.
But just another question, just in terms of the data analytics that you're storing at the point of sale,
yes.
It could be that the woman's using a card and buying it for the man. So I mean, how does one look and interpret it? Similarly with the kids and the older parents, because they could just be giving their bank data, but the actual consumer that's driving the buying decision is still a different category.
Yeah, so this is Google Analytics, so this is Google's data. It's all e-commerce. Google has done a really good job recently differentiating the groups. So it's based on literally your Gmail login. Based on that, they know, and all your other activity. But more so in the last, I want to say 2 years, they started cleaning it up. So they could tell if it's you using your Gmail or someone else if the search behaviors are all of a sudden different. So, and then they'll discount that, and there's another category that says like undefined. So they've gotten a lot better with this data, and it used to be fairly accurate. Now I would say it's very accurate, especially for age and gender. So yes, it could be not perfect. You could have been logged into your laptop and then someone else jumped on and started using it. Google didn't identify yet that it's a different person, but it's gotten a lot better, and Google has a lot of third-party data sources that they use to spot check this.
We're also not allowed in South Africa to use in-store data for retargeting to e-commerce sites. So data that belongs to the retailer, and Acres is a great example of how to protect data. They will not let you, Acres is one of our big department stores, you are not allowed at any given point in time to use the data that is collected at point of sale to retarget to any e-commerce site. The e-commerce consumer remains the e-commerce consumer, and if you acquire them in that way, then they belong to the brand, but if you don't, then they
yes, unless, so that's a very good point. There's a lot of different issues in different countries, limitations. You're absolutely right. The way to get around that specific rule is to use the data if it's within the platform. So Google now will measure and report store visits, not necessarily store sales.
Yeah, but is the visit linked to an email ID?
It is. They themselves. So
Google does that,
Google
does that. But it's a user rather than a person.
It is a user, but they will. So it's not perfect, but you will know if a specific user that Google masks. They don't tell you who it is.
Absolutely.
They visit your store, and then within Google's platform, you could remarket them or market them.
Oh, in South Africa, it could be problematic. But
so Google owns that data, so it's not the store. That's why it's still allowed.
Yeah. It makes sense.
There's a couple of countries like that, so that's how you kind of get around with it. But I know there's a couple of countries that are very strict with like consumer privacy.
Very.
Yeah. Same exercise for age. I won't even do the raising of hands. Everyone knows all my tricks at this point. Also for them, 65 plus had the best conversion rates, and it's funny. We as a and again, this is conversion rates, not amount of visitors or amount of sales, because that bucket, the 65 plus, is only 4% of the visitors, 4.61. Across all the clients, we see that the older brackets. Which one? The worst one I think was literally the younger one. The older consumers are more likely to purchase quicker. They shop around less, and it's all things that make sense, but it's all the stuff that you really should be thinking about as you put together a marketing strategy, and all of this stuff should be really feeding into your marketing strategy. I only have one more slide, and then we'll do some more Q&A if you guys have more questions. This is for Google specifically, but Google has been pushing out a lot of automation recently, as you guys might know. A lot of machine learning, a lot of AI bidding. This is actually an internal slide they have as how they position themselves as opposed to. So this is where companies like Mindset or any advertising agency they work with, but this is how Google sees themselves in this new world, and this is like a future-looking slide as more and more stuff, and it doesn't have to be Google, it's literally automated by machine learning. As machine learning and AI becomes a bigger part of your marketing strategy, this is literally how Google themselves see it playing out. They see that your advertising agency literally sets on top and creates the strategy, sets up the goals, the audiences, creates the assets, and then everything feeds into this automated system that then automatically decides what consumer to bid for, how much to bid for, and that's where it's all heading for. Because right now, especially in the digital space, you could do a lot of really cool things with targeting. Like you could say, I know I need to target women in this age group and go do it, but 99% of it is still being done manually right now, and it shouldn't be. For example, we had a client that did very well by doing hour of data annotations. They figured out when the best hours are for their business and adjusted all their bidding based on that. And it was a huge change for them, and then they actually redid the analysis 6 months later, and it shifted a little bit, and they changed it again a little bit. Right now, those kind of decisions are being done literally every 6 months. With automation, whether by Google or anyone else, they should really be done on the fly. Everything should be real time. It shouldn't be someone manually sitting there digging through data and being, oh, I need to bid 5% more for women on Saturday. All of it will always be much more efficient with automation, but you still need to actually define your goals. You still need the human touch to it, the deciding the creative, the asset of how to actually, what the person will see, right? There's still some override logic that may make sense. So you might, based on the data, it might seem that a lot of your consumers are actually very interested in your products on their mobile, but you might know that actually they don't buy on their mobile. At the end of the day, even though the data shows that they're interested in it, for whatever reason they don't, so you would take out mobile from the advertising. So there's a lot of value in all of the AI and automation and data. I think the big push in the next couple of years is going to be really all the data everyone's been collecting, AI could now use, right? And like no person in this room, even if you had a staff of 20 people, 100 people, could use all the data you have access to, but all the machine learning and AI computing can. So I think that's going to be a big change, but it's going to be very important to oversee all of that automation that happens. So that's, yes?
What is the most, in your field, what is the most expensive word you've bid for?
Yeah, so all the insurance stuff in the US is very expensive because the US has laws that favor people suing each other.
Yeah.
So a lot of like legal.
How do I sue?
Yes, exactly. Legal words are specific, like car injury attorney, like things like that, because the lawyers make all the money, right? Like all these
things like car injury.
Car injury attorney is probably $200 per click.
Yeah.
For our own keywords, pay-per-click management is expensive. On pay-per-click management, PPC management, I think is $80 now, $90 per click. It's all marketplace, so it's literally it's as expensive as people are willing to pay for it.
$200.
Yeah, there's all the. It's fine. You could Google. You could literally Google top keywords, most expensive keywords on Google. I bet that the majority of them would be attorney, insurance, legal related. But it's definitely. So when I started my first company in '97, I remember I started running Google Ads a couple years after when it just came out, and I remember I was spending 5 cents for someone searching web hosting.
And now?
And I was like, that's so expensive. And I stopped it. I'm like, this is such a waste of time. 5 cents on a single click? I'm like, that's ridiculous. Now I think it's like $25 or something. It's You can't do 5 cents even if you wanted to. And I don't know if it's international, but the minimum in the U.S. might be international too for Google is 10 cents now. So you can't even do 5 cents even if you wanted to. But I remember I stopped it. I'm like, it sounds good. So it's all relative, and all the decisions should be data driven. At that time, from the 5 cents, I was getting an ROI. But to me, at that time, literally in the late 90s, when the internet just came around, paying that much for a click to your website just seemed ridiculous. So it's come a long way.
What is the impact of ad blockers on all of these things?
So ad blockers in most cases don't block Google searches, and for Google it's a lot of literally the consumer is looking for your product. That's why it works so well. Like literally on Facebook, I get a lot of the difference between Facebook and Google, right? On Facebook, you want to find a specific audience and then show them your ad a lot and hope that they're interested in your product at that time when you show it. On Google, people are looking for you, so you have purchase intent. You know, someone's searching, I want to buy black socks. You know they're gonna buy black socks, right? On Facebook, you're like, I think this person might buy socks. Let me keep showing them my banner. But aside from that, ad blockers, there's always a battle with ad blockers and advertisers, right? Every time ad blockers block a format, a new format comes up. Luckily, pop-ups went away. Pop-ups were very big for a while. But I think ultimately, media consumption has been moving more and more towards Google search and Facebook, which isn't really affected by ad blockers as much. There's still a lot on the display side, all the websites, but I think I haven't seen a huge change year over year that all of a sudden there's an impact. I think every time ad blockers become more popular, or now I think either Chrome or Firefox is rolling it out by default in some way. The advertising industry just changes that a little. So it's always, I don't think there's been a dramatic change either way. I think that was my last slide, but I could put this up. I think my information's We'll do Q&A, but I think I like the first slide more than the last slide. That's a slide to leave it on. You can see all the slides really quickly now. We'll do Q&A. If you guys want to reach out to me online, I use all the social media platforms, but Twitter I use the most, and LinkedIn I think is the most popular for networking. So feel free to add me, follow me, and I'll open it up to more questions if anyone has any. And I'll put out my business cards up front. If you guys want to grab one after, feel free to reach out to me if there's any follow-up questions after that.
In your view,
yes. Yeah.
In your view, who's getting it right digital advertising wise in the States?
So prior to starting this company, Smart Sites, I spent 3 years at MediaVest, which is part of Publicis, working at Samsung and Walmart.
Yeah.
I think, and the reason I left that position and started this company is I think a lot of very big companies get it right just because they have the money to both spend and experiment. For small business, they have their advertising budget and that's it. Like they can't experiment with it. If they experiment for 3 months and they get no results, they'll go out of business. So I really saw very powerful things being done by the Fortune 50 companies, not even 500. And I started this company to try to provide those services to companies that don't have access to that. So in terms of who's getting it right, the bigger companies always have a natural advantage just because they have more money and because they could experiment more and they have like extra money to go around and test things. I think the bigger companies do it better, but at the same time they're less agile. They're slower to move strategies. So I think the advantages for the small, medium-sized businesses or anyone who's not Fortune 50 company or a 500 company is the agility that you could move around a lot quicker. And I think I've seen a lot of smaller companies perform a lot better than their bigger counterparts because they are quicker to respond to changes. And that's the big thing. The bigger you become as a company, the slower you move, right? Any kind of like market change, or so that's your competitive advantage as a smaller guy. You don't have the access to all the resources and all the marketing and maybe even the talent pool, but you have the agility.
And the smallest budget you've worked on?
We work with that, but we do a lot of small businesses. I think for online marketing, we start at Google budget at $1,500 a month, $1,500.
Really?
So we have a lot of small, medium-sized businesses. You'd be surprised. We work with a lot of like the final holdouts of the internet age, and we have a very good relationship with Google. And one of the reasons is we get these people into the internet age. So the one person companies, the roofing guy, right? Like he makes his roofs. He's been fixing roofs for 3 generations. His father, his grandfather. Never needed any marketing because it was all referral, like friends and family, right? And all of a sudden he's like, I'm not getting any business. He's like, my family's been doing this forever. He doesn't have a website. He's on Google. People go search on Google now instead of asking their friends or family. I've seen it's such a crazy shift, and a lot of it's cultural. So you might see stuff that's different, but I've seen so many cases where maybe 20 years ago someone would ask their parents for a suggestion.
Yeah.
It was very accepted. Like a plumber or any kind of service, like you'd go to your parents and ask them. People don't do that anymore. The younger generation just goes online.
Yeah.
It's such a huge change. So we deal with a lot of SMBs, small businesses that literally are the last holdouts of the digital age. We make them a website, start doing Google Ads for them, amongst other things. Yes?
What would you say are some of the key skills and expertise that a marketing professional or a marketing-centric organization needs to start investing in to future-proof themselves?
Good question. I think being very cognizant of data and data analytics is much more important now than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I think that'll continue to be a focus. Looking into the future, what's going to be important, data is still going to be number one. Data is going to drive marketing, it's going to drive everything going forward. Being able to use that with AI and machine learning is going to be big, so you just have to be cognizant of all that upcoming, literally, the data has to feed into something. They'll then make changes. That something still doesn't really exist. It's still being worked on, but you have to be really cognizant of it. But if you think about it, 10 years ago, and you do marketing, advertising, what metrics or data did you really have to go on? In the U.S., in the print industry, they would charge you based on how many magazines they print. That's why if you walk around New York City, they have stacks of newspapers on the street because literally that's how they charge it. It's based on printing. That's all that gets measured. There's no like all the data we looked at. Literally, you have number of printed copies. For TV, you had Nielsen that really dominated the space, that put boxes in select people's houses, a couple thousand people, and based on that, they would project out 350 million population, right? That's the data you had to go by. So you didn't really need to have anyone that was really like a data scientist or into data analytics because the data wasn't there. The numbers weren't there. I think going forward, I think the last 5 years have been an overload of data, maybe the last 10 years, that you really have all this data, but you don't know really what to do with, and you didn't need to, right? Yeah. It was just like you collect the data, you know that this age group does better, and like you really don't need to do anything with it. I think the next 10 years is really you have to start applying it. I think if you don't, you'll be at a disadvantage, and keeping up with all the machine learning and AI is going to be huge because, like I was saying, it was one thing to manually adjust for all these things that we talked about every 6 months or whatever your interval is, versus the machine learning doing it on the fly every 10 seconds or whatever it is. It's going to be a huge change. So looking into the future in terms of what you would need a company to have in a company, both I guess talent and infrastructure, I think it's collecting of data, analyzing of data, and machine learning. Any other questions? Yes.
So we're seeing a shift towards a personalized shopping experience.
Yes.
Using data and artificial intelligence. Do you see a drive in that direction from a marketing perspective as well, like on the digital platform, where it becomes individualized or personalized marketing?
Yes, so great question. So almost two different, you can almost separate it in half. The experience a consumer expects to have on the website and the e-commerce experience versus what they expect from the advertising. I could tell you that we're getting to a point where ads could be super personalized. If you guys search around, there was a funny case study this guy did I think a couple of years ago, but he created an audience on Facebook of one person, his roommate, and then he started showing his roommate like specific ads about him. Like it would be like make your bed, like right dad would say. It would be like literally to the audience of one. We're getting to a point where you could do a lot of really cool stuff like that. I think that the consumer doesn't demand it yet, like they demand a personalized shopping experience, but at the same time I think that consumers are less scared of it. I think 3 years ago, if I went to a website and the banner on top said like Alex do this, like it was personalized to me, I would get like really freaked out. Turn the computer off, right? And like I imagine like my grandma seeing something, I should like toss the computer out the window. But I think now and moving forward, people are starting to be okay with that. So I don't think they necessarily want that or demanding it, but it's becoming almost accepted norm. Like I wouldn't get freaked out, I think, if I saw a banner that had my specific name, because I know all the data exists there. I know Google has all my data, and I think in this day and age, just using the internet, you have to accept that your data is out there. It'll definitely be used for very custom marketing stuff.
I think so. If I'm not mistaken, it's Diskim, one of our pharmaceutical kind of companies. What do they call that? Pharmaceutical Diskim. They've actually just launched some of their IE where they on the shelving. They're using quite a lot of data that they've gathered, and what they found, like with the black male wearing a what's it, armor guard or something, armor. Under Armour.
Yes.
Typically, most people that are coming in at a certain age group also wears this. So now they double marketed their products. So every time you walk past and it sees that you are male, it will play the ad specifically for you. As the female walks past, it plays the female ad. So I think we'll probably go into that stage a lot easier in the beginning, that will now prepare us into the individualized marketing. But those things are existing already in our South African environment, and retailers that's not on board quick enough are going to lose out.
Yeah, and it makes sense. It's all about relevancy, right? How many ads do I see per day on TV that have nothing to do with me? A lot. It's a waste of their money. Every time those ads come up, some advertisers losing money because they paid to show that ad to me, and it has nothing to do with me. Digital just empowers you to avoid wasting money like that as much as possible. So for sure, I think it's going to be maybe not. It might take a couple of years for my example to have like my name everywhere. But at the very least, gender, age, those are such easy things to segment that for sure. I keep seeing pharmaceutical ads on TV for like medicine for older age groups. Like that doesn't apply to me whatsoever. And I know they're expensive too. They're like running during primetime TV, expensive ads. Someone's wasting money on that. I think ads are going to become definitely more relevant and targeted. Any more questions?
So
yes.
What's your take on consumer privacy?
The consumer what?
Privacy.
Privacy. So it's very country specific in general. I think in the U.S. consumers have a lot less privacy. In Europe now, they're being a lot stricter. I think a lot of it has been kind of a knee-jerk reaction to such a huge change. Especially a lot of the older population that's making these laws, for them it just seems very crazy. For younger generation, very few in younger generation really feel like they're giving up anything online, right? But you are. Anytime you go online, you give up all your information, absolutely all your information. I think there's been a lot of privacy concerns in the laws recently. I think in the next 10 years they'll ease up as the generation who grew up in this space gets older and gets into position of people who make the laws. My take on it might not be the same as everyone else's. I fully embrace the idea that if I go online, I have no more privacy, right? And a lot of people still like hang on to the idea that I want all the benefits of the internet, but I want to stay completely anonymous.
So what's the use of you clicking on privacy and security? It's not private.
So it's
because I keep on prompting you to
yeah. So especially in Europe, there's a lot of things you have to accept their privacy laws and statements. I'll generalize it because every country is specific, but generally you're accepting the terms they outline there, that they'll do their best to keep your information private and you won't resell your information directly. Right, that's what I say. But if they use Google Analytics on their website, which they probably do, they're already indirectly reselling your information to Google. There's a reason Google Analytics is free. Yes.
Obviously, with the amount of acquisitions and stuff, so information is not private. It goes into
no, it's not. It's not. It's not. Again, my opinion might not be the most popular one, but I accept the notion that if I want all the benefits of the internet, I have to give up my privacy. I'd like for my identity not to be stolen or my credit card not to be stolen. I do my best for that not to happen. But in terms of going to a website and the website knowing my gender and age, I accept that. I assume that to some extent. I think a lot of recent laws try to protect the consumer a little bit, which is good. I have nothing against protecting the consumer, but I think people will get used to At the end of the day, there's a lot of benefits to the internet the way it exists today. It's very hard to say I want all the benefits, but I want to remain completely private and not give up any information.
But also, it's no longer about your email address. It's about your psychographics and your behavior. There are so many people that are similar to you that I can target. If I know what you like, what you don't like,
build a lookalike
how you behave, I build a lookalike audience. Eventually, the message is going to get to you. So people are so worried about the personal information like your phone number and your email address and your ID. It's no longer about that. It's
not
about
that someone's downloading
a group of people that think in a particular way, that behave in a particular way, and as a result, there isn't one of you, believe it or not. There's many of you that think in a similar way.
As an advertiser, I'm completely fine with that, but I know a lot of consumers that are very concerned.
One of the questions in South Africa we've got what we call the pocket in terms of privacy. So how do you guys manage that? Do you have similar?
I'm sorry.
In South Africa we have what we call the pocket act.
What is that?
It's about
information. Okay, gotcha.
So how do you guys manage it?
So for our advertising, we don't store data of any kind. We don't need to.
Yeah, you don't need to.
Google does it, and third-party sources do it.
Third party carries all the Google.
Yes, we don't store data of any kind for anything we do. In the U.S., they're similar. There's it's in the U.S. It's mostly applied to the medical field. There's a lot of laws of what you can store and can't store in medical, anything medical related. But from an advertising standpoint, we don't need to store anything. So it makes it easier for us. But in Europe, it gets a little trickier, I know. But even Europe, from an advertising standpoint, you don't need to store any of your own data anymore. You used to. Right, 10 years ago, that's how Oracle became the company it is. Oracle specialized in helping companies store tons of data. But these days, not only do you not need to, you should do your best to not have to. Because if you're storing all this data and then get hacked and then gets exposed, you're going to be in a very big mess.
Yeah, so we've got a challenge at the moment. Oracle's only still coming in. So software as a service,
yes.
In terms of, so we don't have the infrastructure yet, and hopefully in the next 2 years or so we will. So it's still become quite a challenge, and we actually forced to store your own data on-prem. So hopefully in 2 years' time that will start migrating more, because I mean, ideally you want to specialize in what you do.
And
if
not be an IT company.
And not be an IT company, which at this stage we unfortunately forced to do.
I think that's the exact same place where many companies in the US were maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago. You literally had to be your own IT company.
Yeah.
I think it'll change. And not just South Africa, Europe is not that far behind, but a lot of countries similarly. A lot of companies I talk to, they're literally are their own IT companies, and they just everything's stored locally and just not caught up.
Yeah, it's crazy. So part of the challenge is also understanding all of the firewalls that are required. especially when moving into a cloud base. And so a lot of that skills we don't have at the moment, which is also quite a big challenge. So our IT teams are having to learn all of these things as we progress, and it becomes painful lessons.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a painful process. But I think it'll happen. After that, it'll be a lot easier. It'll be a lot easier. Yes, question.
I can't recall now. Have you always been on the agency side in terms of your work experience?
Yes.
Yes.
Think about from the young age.
Didn't you work for Sam? Oh, you were on the agency side.
Yeah,
you worked on the Sam
Publicis. Yeah, it was Publicis. I had a couple of short stays and stints and not on the agency side, but most of my experiences agency side, the businesses I've run, and all the businesses that I work with.
Because my question was going to be around how the strategic business relationship between client and agency has been impacted by digital migration.
I haven't seen much of an impact. So at Publicis, I was there 10 years ago, and I got to see their traditional agency that now does a lot of digital. I got to see their relationships at that time, and I know how they work now. I think similar to almost every other industry, there's a lot less loyalty on that side. Companies would stay with an agency like forever. They would sign like 10-year deals and then re-sign them. I think much more shopping around that happens now. I think mostly because of digital, because it's so easy to research other companies and all of that. But I don't think their relationships have changed that much. I think it's still, a lot of it is literally relationship holding and building. So regardless, and this is, I'm going into like personal opinions, but from the big agencies I've seen and even the smaller ones, I've seen a lot of cases where even if the agency doesn't perform well, if they have a good relationship, they'll stay with them. So a lot of it's still relationship building. That's old school. Yeah. Relationship building and keeping is old school. It's not like the internet age, right? In the internet age, young consumers don't value that as much. So I don't think it's shifted much yet. But there's definitely less loyalty. Digital age just brings a lot more information to people. I think in a lot of times the consumer is more educated. 10 years ago, I can't imagine anyone at Samsung calling up Publicis and like talking about conversion rates and like A/B testing and like all these things. I think the internet brought a lot of education to everyone, and at every level within a company now, even like the CEO of a company could go online and learn about like digital trends and then call the agency and ask them about it. I think that's all new. Before, like you wouldn't go to a library and try to learn that. It just was too cumbersome. So I think that's one of the big changes I've seen, but nothing dramatic. Any more questions, comments, topics? Yeah, you're all good. Feel free to grab a business card after and reach out if there's anything I can help with. Well,
kids.
You can follow me online, of course. Go to smartsites.com, alexmelen.com.
Would you just, yeah, there we go. You see everybody, the slides are on my computer already.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
When you say it this time. Alex?
Yeah, just before we go, just on behalf of the group, we would like to thank you for your time today and the effort you've put into the presentation. Many of us are future leaders within our organizations, and today we've seen a picture of the future. And this helps us create a roadmap for our various organizations on how to win in a sector that is still fairly new within our markets. So for that we say thank you. In closing, just to also say that we came with great expectations to America. And this presentation has certainly met mine, and I'm sure many, judging by the discussions today. So you've met and exceeded what we expected. So thank you for that on behalf of the group. Thank you very much.
For a picture there.